Okay. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. And we have Dana presenting on the summer camp that or field camp that she led this summer in Northwest Territories. And we're super excited to hear her presentation. So, oh, yes, and good. Nancy has joined us too. Dana has been working with Nancy on this project, so super excited to hear about that. So I am just going to turn off my camera and oops, it looks like we're still getting a couple more people in. And Dana, yeah, why don't we go ahead and get started? This presentation is being recorded and we will update the website when we have it loaded. So we'll be able to share that information as well.
That sounds good. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, looks really great.
Cool, cool. Should I just get started then?
Yeah, I think I just admitted one more person, but it is 2:06, so hopefully that means yes, let's just go ahead and get started.
Sounds good. Cool. Well, welcome everyone. I'm Dana Redhuis. I'm an assistant research scientist at Michigan Tech Research Institute. My presentation today is about some of the fieldwork that I did this summer up in Yellowknife through our ABoVE Wetlands project. So this presentation is called Empowering and Educating Communities, demonstrating how synthetic aperture radar can be utilized to protect wetlands and waterfowl through outreach in the Northwest Territories. Yeah, and then I have everyone who's contributed to this project on this slide. Nancy French is the PI, and some of the main contributors to this fieldwork include Mike Battaglia, Becky Edwards at Ducks Unlimited Canada, Sunny Lenore, and Erin Sneap, who is a newer employee at Ducks Unlimited. Yeah, moving forward. So just an overview of the presentation. I'm going to start off with a brief review of MTRI's ABoVE Wetland project, reviewing our results to date, ongoing project objectives, and our current work. Then I'll go into the on the land camp debrief. I'll talk about how we built the collaborations we made, the development of the camp and the camp curriculum just from the MTRI side. Then I'll move into the day-by-day schedule of the camp, where I'll talk more in depth about all of the activities that we created for the youth. Then I'll discuss the engagement we're actively working on in the community post-camp. Yeah. And this picture is from we saw the Northern Lights every night that it was clear. So this is the fire from our campsite with the Northern Lights above, which is cool. I love this picture. So first, going into the brief review. Yeah, here are our project results to date. The first phase of this project was focused on demonstrating the use of remote sensing, particularly the use of synthetic aperture radar, to improve modeling of wetland habitat change and waterfowl distribution, particularly in the Peace, Athabasca, and Slave River deltas. I was not part of the project in this phase. The main people who did this work are Mike Battaglia, Dorothea Vandermilt, Jeremy Graham, yeah, and our MTRI team. The main objectives of this phase of the project involved mapping wetland type, mapping wetland flooding, demonstrating waterfowl abundance modeling, and mapping using wetland products, and an initial development of NASA's wetland dynamics products. The current phase of this project began in fall of 2022, and it aims to characterize waterfowl habitat dynamics, carbon sequestration potential, and other high priority wetland services identified by community members. Objective 1 is to engage with communities to identify products that are of value to users. Objective 2 is to then create decision support products, mature our SR processing algorithms, and use those algorithms to map the entirety of the above study area. Objective 3 is to conduct technology transfer and capacity building for partner organizations, such as Ducks Unlimited Canada. This presentation will mainly focus on Objective 1, but we're well underway on Objectives 2 and 3. Then going into building collaborations that led to the creation of the On the Land camp. Starting from the beginning, this process began in October of 2023 when our team attended the Northwest Territories Water Stewardship Conference in Deta, which is like 20 minutes from Yellowknife in the Northwest Territories. Nancy French presented during this conference, and our primary goal was to ask community members, NWT government employees, and researchers in the area about knowledge gaps regarding water resource management, gaps in the ability to monitor and manage wetlands, and what wetland information would be valuable. We specifically surveyed on the 3 questions in this graph. Trying to find out what wetland information would be valuable for communities, organizations, governmental entities. And we did receive a ton of valuable information about the needs of the communities in the area. We built connections with the Mackenzie River Basin Board, the Kasho-Gotin Foundation, and other organizations. But we were also focused on asking about general needs in the community. How could we as external researchers provide real and lasting positive contributions to the community that we were working in outside of water management solutions? That's kind of how we became connected with Northern Youth Leadership and Ecology North. They were 2 organizations that were also attending the conference. And we decided to set up a follow-up meeting with Steph of NYL and Brandon of Ecology North, and found that a way we could really engage with the communities was through assisting in the creation of On the Land camps, which is something that Northern Youth Leadership has run for several years. Northern Youth Leadership runs remote wilderness programming for youth aged 11 to 17 from across the Northwest Territories. These camps are meant to help youth develop leadership skills, life skills, emotional resilience, and challenge themselves through positive risk-taking. The director of this organization is Steph Woodward, and the project coordinator is Golia Maklitsov-Kazan. Steph attended the camp, and Golia was going to attend the camp, but unfortunately was sick. And then Nina Gropp was their youth employee who also attended the camp. So this is Steph here and Nina. Then Ecology North is a regular partner organization with Northern Youth Leadership. And they work to support sound environmental decision-making on an individual, community, and regional level. And they maintain collaborative partnerships with local and community educational organizations to promote public education. Brandon Pludinsky was our main collaborator with Ecology North. Additional camp collaborators included Becky Edwards, and Aaron Sneap, both from Ducks Unlimited Canada. And then Brandon Mack is a videographer who was hired by Northern Youth Leadership to document the camp, which is really cool. Then moving on to the development of the camp and the curriculum developed by MTRI. So we decided to partner with Northern Youth Leadership's Hidden Lake Leadership Camp, which had already been scheduled for August 12th through the 18th. We decided to host the first few days of the camp at the Dene Adventures, which is a like adventure summer camp type space in Deta. They have cabins for groups to stay in. They have a big meeting space. It's a really great place to host big groups of people. um, so we stayed there in order to conduct a few workshops and provide paddle training to the kids. All of the kids received their level 1 Paddle Canada certification, which is the first step to becoming a canoe instructor, which opens up all kinds of jobs up north. So that was really cool. So we had them do this paddle training, conduct a few workshops, and then we embarked on a day-long portage to Hidden Lake about 2-3 days into the camp. Northern Youth Leadership took care of the youth signups. They had 80 students total sign up for their programming for the summer, and our camp was one of the highest requested. And we ended up being able to bring 12 kids onto this camp. NYL is a really cool organization. They're able to handle all of the costs of travel and the camp for the youth. They provide free outdoor gear. They don't charge any fees. So while our team was able to contribute financially to the camp, it was really cool to see how organizations up north gather around youth to make sure that they are able to have really cool experiences. And then the youth that were still in high school and attended school in Yellowknife were also able to receive science and home ec credits for their attendance. So it was overall a lot of benefits to the kids for attending this camp, which was really cool to see. NTRI was specifically in charge of maintaining curriculum related to wetlands and remote sensing. So I was able to lead a few workshops that I'll cover in the day-to-day slides, and I created a few work packets that each kid was able to take home. It resulted in me bringing, I think, 10 to 15 pounds of laminated paper up to Yellowknife, which was great. TSA was very confused when they opened my carry-on. So the first packet that I made was a broad overview of remote sensing, particularly focused on how SAR works. The second was a worksheet aimed to assist with RGB satellite imagery interpretation. Sorry, something is, here we go. Yeah, the second worksheet was aimed to assist with RGB satellite imagery interpretation. The first page discusses different elements of image interpretation. And each worksheet includes examples from around Hidden Lake, around the area that we were going to be canoeing, to help illustrate each element. Each kid also received a bingo sheet, which was used during our scavenger hunt workshop to help with species in, identification. The first kid to fill out their sheet won an extra candy bar for dessert that day. They mostly just had fun filling out the sheets. They didn't need much motivation, which was nice. And then each kid also received 19 different maps of Hidden Lake with different imagery examples, including SAR data, particularly Sentinel-1A, and we had some UAV SAR products of the Yellowknife area for the kids, which they thought was really interesting. And we had our inundation product outputs. They also had examples of cloudy, smoky, snowy RGB imagery from Landsat and Sentinel-2. So this example is the snowy imagery example. It took them a very long time to guess what was happening in this picture. They thought it was just like an error in the way that the map was printed. And I was like, no, like there's something here happening. Like what, like look at the date. What do you think is happening? Um, that was fun. They were very confused, but they got it in the end. They also received a false color infrared map, an NDVI, and a DEM of the area. And all of these examples were meant to demonstrate all of the different ways that we as scientists can look at the land. Yeah, and they worked out really well. The kids, it was summer, so like handing kids worksheets in the middle of summer doesn't always go super well, but they genuinely seemed interested in these. So I took that as a win. Then next, we can go into the day-by-day schedule for the camp. So we spent our first day at Bidene, mostly focused on the paddle skills training that I mentioned earlier. It was super smoky the first couple days. So that kind of made things a little bit complicated in terms of like keeping kids outside when it was too bad, keeping kids inside when the air quality was getting rough. It was really nice to have buildings at this point in the camp. Then we held our first main workshop when it was really smoky. And in this workshop, Becky and Aaron from Ducks Unlimited walked the kids through the decision-making process required to build an IPCA, or an Indigenous Protected Conservation Area. Our project's mapping efforts have been utilized in the creation of the Slave Telston IPCA. And these maps, in addition to climate change vulnerability maps, wildlife corridor maps, mineral rights and access maps, and other maps depicting different things were all utilized. The kids were grouped into different interests. So like one group of kids were all meant to be miners. Another group of kids was meant to be like outdoor recreation outfitters. Another group was meant to be the Indigenous community. And each group had to argue for their specific IPCA boundaries based on their motivations. The kids then had to agree on a final outline, and that information was actually relayed to the IPCA negotiations team through Ducks Unlimited. So their input was actually listened to as this IPCA negotiation is still actively occurring. Our second day at Bidene was similar. Again, it was really smoky. We had the second and final day of paddle skills training, and this was mostly focused on canoe rescue, which was really cool. The kids got really into it. Once they figured out how to flip the canoes safely, they wanted to keep flipping the canoes. And then Ducks held a second workshop, this time focused on waterfowl. I wasn't able to be a part of this workshop, so I don't know the specifics of what they did, but I do know that they let the kids handle duck skulls, and they measured their own wingspans compared to different waterfowl species. And that was a really successful workshop. Everyone had a lot of fun. They were talking about it afterwards, which is always a good sign. We then moved into a models and mirrors workshop, which is where we used lasers against mirrors to demonstrate how active imagery collection like SAR works. And the kids had to create a mini map of the room based on how the lasers bounced off of their mirrors and on different objects. This was probably the most complicated workshop we did. Overall, by the end, the kids were getting it, but this one was definitely a work in progress type of workshop. We would have the lasers kept dying on us, so we had to like keep replacing the batteries. There's a few things we would change if we ran this workshop again, but overall it worked pretty well. We then did our first portage on day 3. So we had to load up the cars and drive the hour to Hidden Lake Territorial Park. Before that, we walked the kids through our routes using the different imagery examples that we had of Hidden Lake. We asked the kids to mark out areas where they thought the terrain might be difficult based on the examples. Where did areas seem flooded based on the SAR imagery? Where are the longest paths with changing elevations based on the DEM, and stuff like that. The kids were pretty good at marking out the trickiest areas in the hike, which was nice to see. Our progress, our workshops were paying off. And this day ended up being really cold, really rainy, really windy. You can kind of see in some of the kids' faces, like near the end of the day, they were ready to be done, but they were really impressive in the way that they stuck it out. So then we made it to our site, we set up camp, and our next day was just, we woke up to pouring rain, temperatures in the 40s to low 50s. We were going to have this day be filled with workshops and activities and like canoeing to different areas in the lake. But we pivoted to having it be a kid focused day where the kids kind of decided what they wanted to do. Just to, because the weather was so miserable, we didn't want to force kids to do something on top of it. And what they decided to do was spend 8 hours playing Monopoly in their tents. But it ended up being a great bonding activity for them. Like they all seemed a lot closer. When the rain finally cleared up, they all came and sat around the fire. There any like small like squabbles that were happening in the beginning of the camp had kind of cleared up. And the rain ended up clearing up later in the evening too, which was nice. We were able to do a late night swim, eat snacks around the fire. The end of this day is when the weather kind of turned around, which was nice. The next day, luckily the rain had stopped. The kids made a big breakfast of pancakes, bacon, and eggs. And then we set out for the day and traveled to what we suspected was a swamp wetland site across the water. We walked through how to identify a wetland while in this swamp site, and then brought them to a marsh to see if they could identify a new wetland type based off of the information that we gave them. We had the kids fill out a copy of our actual wetland field worksheets. We had a team collecting wetland data. Dorothea Vanderbilt, Chris Cook, and Laura Borjo Chavez were out on the ABoVE project that Laura is the PI of. So we had worksheets already created. And we used those same worksheets and had the kids walk through it and in order to identify wetlands. And it worked out really well. They were pretty invested, which is always good. And then Ducks Unlimited ran a macroinvertebrate workshop at the marsh that we were at, where the kids were given magnifying glasses and nets, and they ended up catching a ton of fun bugs and minnows to identify. Throughout this day, this is the day where the kids had access to their bingo sheets and they were able to use them to practice their identification skills. And we ended this day with Jiffy Pop on the fire for everyone, and all of us staff members stayed up to watch the Northern Lights after we made all the kids go to bed at 10. So that was really fun. We were able to kind of coordinate and figure out what we wanted to do for the rest of the camp with the Northern Lights above us. Then day 6 was our last full day at camp. Luckily, we had excellent weather again. Brandon, the videographer, gave one more workshop on paddling skills to kind of address some issues that we had seen throughout the week. And the rest of the staff made breakfast, packed lunches, headed out on the water again. And then we headed out on the water again as a group. This time we directed the group towards what we suspected was a peatland. We initially arrived at the site and couldn't find any evidence of a peatland, unfortunately. So instead, we sat the kids down and walked them through a story making activity involving the 7 elements of satellite imagery interpretation worksheet that I had brought along. Instead of going through imagery examples, we had the kids think about different elements of a wetland, its connection with the rest of the environment surrounding it, different patterns and shapes and textures they could see in a wetland. And we just had them journal about their observations. And while they were journaling, Erin from Ducks ventured deeper inland and was actually able to find a porphin. So the kids were super excited to learn about another wetland type. And they really enjoyed just sinking into the peat. Like just they really enjoyed how soft the peatland was. And we ended this day on a high note. We had found a peatland. We had done what we had got. We had taught the kids about tons of different wetland types. And we were able to end that day by starting to pack up while feeling pretty accomplished. Then day 7 was the day of our final portage. We finished breaking down camp, and staff members led aftercare plans and youth evaluations. Aftercare plans are something that NYL does at the end of every camp. They have the kids write out how they're going to adjust to going back home, and they write out some goals for what they want to do next, so NYL can support them in any way that they can. Like we had one kid say they wanted to continue getting additional canoe certifications. So NYL is now working with him so he can do that. So stuff like that. And then we had a pretty smooth portage back. The weather was so much nicer than our way in. And the kids seemed to feel more comfortable with carrying the canoes and heavier loads. We then handed out leadership awards to each kid at Boston Pizza. And the local Yellowknife kids were able to head home. The rest of us stayed at the campsite across the street from the airport with the kids who were flying out the next day. But overall, we wrapped up. Everything went really smoothly. And the kids seemed a lot more confident and capable in themselves, which is really awesome to see. Then going into some of the post-camp engagement that we have been working on since this camp in August. So this camp was truly a safe space where kids could connect with nature, learn about science and land stewardship from different researchers, scientists, mentors. They were able to build leadership skills and build lasting bonds with one another. These are some of the activities that we're doing post-camp in order to document what we did in order to replicate these results. So a few things that we're doing. First, we're publishing a notes from the field article. Each of the kids are contributing, and they'll all receive authorship for this article. Or blog post, I guess. There's going to be a second blog post written as well by Hannah Asko, who's an Ecology North employee who was able to ride the UAV SAR plane when it flew in Yellowknife. Additionally, there's going to be a short documentary, like 20-25 minutes, I believe. And that's currently being prepared by the videographer, Brandon Mack. in order to be shared with all of the communities that Northern Youth Leadership works in. The ABoVE program is explicitly mentioned. Both Nancy French and Laura Borges-Chavez's ABoVE projects are explicitly mentioned. It's just a really cool visibility opportunity for research. Then we're beginning Northern Youth Leadership is beginning preparation for next year's On the Land camps. And we're planning on either providing the same materials that we provided last year or attending again, just depending on scheduling and budgets and everything. And then lastly, we're presenting a similar presentation to this at AGU in the Science for Everyone section. And that's what I have. Are there any questions?
Thank you so much, Dana. I that was really incredible and seems like such an amazing thing. Liz and I were both watching and saying we wished that we could have been campers.
We had our own commentary
Yes.
in our office here.
I have a question. I mean, you said that there was, quite a lot of demand for the class and that, many people applied and that there were only, I think you said 12. And can you tell us a little bit more about the people who participated and how did they make decisions about who to select? And, did any of them already have experience with, canoeing or looking at maps or thinking about wetlands or that type of thing?
Yeah. So they had, like I said, they had like 80 students, a large amount of students apply, and that they had all of the students apply to all of their camps. They ran 4 camps last year. One was in the Nahani for 20, that was a 20-day rafting expedition. Yeah. They ran 2 other camps last summer. So the kids were divided in terms of what they were most interested in and what camp had space. And from what I know about the application process, they kind of determined it was a like Google form that they filled out, kind of like a college application or something. Each student had to write a short statement about their experience outdoors, like if they had any experience or if they had never had experience but really wanted to get out and experience something like this. So it was kind of like a ranked choice application system.
And so it sounds like perhaps some of the participants hadn't had experience, like, you did the canoeing camp to teach them, canoeing techniques and that kind of stuff. Like, were they from not just the Northwest Territories, but the north of Canada in general?
Yeah, they were all of these kids were from the Northwest Territories. I think
Okay.
6 of them. Yeah, I think 6 of them were from Yellowknife proper.
Okay.
And then 6 were from everywhere. There was one kid from Inuvik, one kid from Colwell Lake, a few kids from, I think 2 kids were from Kisa and like surrounding areas. So a lot of these kids did already have outdoor experience.
Right.
And a lot of them did already know how to canoe, but they were able to get the certification through the camp, which was really cool.
Right.
There were 2 kids who had never been camping before, never gone canoeing, like had never done anything like this before. And seeing their growth, particularly through the camp, was really cool. One kid on the first portage, she just like completely melted down. She's like, I don't want to do this. Like, my grandma made me sign up for this. Um, like I don't know why anyone would ever do this type of like mindset. And by the end, we were driving her to the airport and she said, okay, I guess it was pretty fun. I'm glad I came. And we took that as a pretty good win.
Yeah. I know that Liz has another question, but I also want to give space if other participants on the call, maybe you can raise your hand in Teams, and we'll be sure to get to them. But
Or put it in the chat.
or put it in the chat if you want to. But go ahead, Liz.
I was just gonna ask, do you think you'll repeat this next year? Is there any plans to do it again?
I would love to. It really depends on, oh yeah, maybe Nancy can answer that better than me.
We're hoping to have some at least influence on what they're doing. Dana would love to go back, of course, and it has to do with funding of our project and whether we can get done what we need to get done for our promises on the grant versus this. Now, this comes under, as Dana explained, the project includes collaborating and building partnerships with people, and this is that part of it. Ducks Unlimited Canada was our partner to help facilitate this type of thing. And so they're doing a lot of other things related to engaging communities, which is really exciting. More on the kind of helping people understand landscapes and some of the protected areas. So this was a bit different. We didn't have this in mind when we wrote the proposal as, reaching out to the youth, but I think it's highly effective. And so we'd like to fit it into our budget. And I have some thoughts on that. But we got to also, as my boss used to say, answer the mail. We got to get our work done on the things that are on our plate. So Dana and I are working on the budget this next few weeks and we'll make a decision.
Really cool.
Yeah, and there is a camp that will definitely happen, a science-focused camp through Northern Youth Leadership. It's in Norman. It's already been scheduled. It's in Norman Wells from the end of June to beginning of July, and we'll definitely have materials that they'll be able to bring on that camp. But yeah, it's just figuring out if we can go on it too.
So the funding from this past years, it was like some Ecology North, some Ducks, and then maybe, and like, was Dana's time covered by your project? Is that kind of how it worked out?
Yeah, Dana's time was covered on Dana and Mike Battaglia spent a lot of time preparing the materials, and then we printed and eliminated the materials. So we really
Takes a lot of
provided that part of it. Coordinating and planning with Ducks Unlimited. We also have a service agreement with Ducks Unlimited. We're giving them funding to conduct workshops. That was in the proposal, and we called this a workshop. So they had a budget to be able to actually provide some actual money, and I don't remember what that covered per se, because Northern Youth Leadership and Ecology North have a reasonable funding stream from their regular programs. Of course, they're nonprofits, so it's not like they're raking it in, but yeah, it was like a pooled effort, and we did what we could with really time and materials from our project.
Mm-hmm.
Were you saying something, or Dana?
Yeah, I just was going to say, we were able to contribute financially in a few ways through our collaboration with Ducks Unlimited Canada to kind of get around the US-Canada financial issues that people have run into.
Yeah. So I think it would be amazing. I hope that you are already planning on kind of writing up what your teaching plan was for, how, like, the way that you described that you tried to get the kids to imagine, what was happening by looking at the images. I really hope that you can write that up and share both like how you did it and the images you used. Maybe, we could share that with the broader community.
Yeah.
I feel like that is a super valuable contribution, that even if this specifically doesn't get to, happen again, like as an example of, how to do that. And I see that has, my comment has, or maybe now John has his hand raised. So John, go ahead.
Yeah, there wasn't specific to that. I had another question I wanted to bring up.
Yeah.
Early on, you mentioned you were out in the community, and Nancy did a presentation there, and then you surveyed the audiences to find out what their needs and interests were, what kind of products they wanted. Was an on-the-land camp one of the things identified during that survey, or were there any other kinds of activities that were particularly brought up as ways that you could reach out to folks in effective ways there?
You can go ahead, Dana.
Yeah, the on the land camp kind of resulted organically from conversations we had post conference. But from the conference itself, some of the we were able to build a few collaborations that resulted in us creating products for a few organizations. That's kind of where we what resulted from those surveys was the creation of products, especially for like the Champaign and Asia community. We created a few products, and we've talked with the Mackenzie River Basin Association to talk about like opportunities for us to create products for their next State of the River report. And yeah, just kind of, we talked about the creation of products mostly.
Yeah, and we're still ongoing with that. We have another year of funding, and the kind of the heart of what we're working on is trying to understand how the products that we've created with our NASA capabilities, how is that helpful to people who are out there, instead of just, here's what we got. We wanted to go out there and say, here's what we got. Do you like it? Do you want something different? Do you want, how could we make it so that you can have this all the time in a certain way? So that's the partnership with Ducks Unlimited. Hopefully the plan is that we identify some of these kind of core needs, and then they'll be there for the duration to actually make them. We've transferred our algorithm for the inundation mapping to Ducks Unlimited, so they can run that algorithm with Sentinel-1 data, and so that's an example that they'll be able to continue, we hope. And really, we had some limited interest in that, and we had some. I've learned a lot about working with people who are out there and don't know much about remote sensing, and then they see that we're mapping their place, and some people are a little put off about, okay, you mapped my place. Do I want that or not? I didn't ask for it. So, anyway, it's been very positive. Generally, the camp with the youth, I think, is definitely like a gold star. We feel like, so we'll highlight that. But more so, I want to be able to say, we supported, for example, the Indigenous protected areas effort right now within Canada. They're looking at mapping a whole lot of area to understand what areas need to be protected. And we're hoping to at least support that in some way, or show how the products that we make can support that. So that's what we're doing.
Thanks. That's helpful to know. I know in Alaska, we find that finding a good partner who's already organized and has a lot of the field logistics managed is really a key part of that, because that's how you can make it work really effectively. And in the past, I worked with a group called the Alaska Conservation Action Corps, which was kind of like a branch of YCC. But in my recent experience, I don't think they funded that, and it was run by the state of Alaska at the time. And so I'm not even sure now who in Alaska would be running those kinds of camps. There's some in isolated places, but I was just curious whether the partnership is what kind of gave you the opportunity, whether it was something that was identified by the community. That's something also not nice to know. So thanks. It's a really cool project. Sounds like
Thanks,
fun.
John. Yeah, we're
Thank
proud
you.
of it. Thanks. And thanks, Dana. You did a great job.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, this is really awesome. You're still working on the notes from the field write-up? Is that,
Mhm.
yeah?
Yeah,
Okay,
the goal is to have it done by the end of the year.
okay,
Yeah, once the kids got back into school, their progress has been slow going, but we've we've scheduled a few like after school workshops for them to come on Zoom and work on it together, and that should hopefully help.
cool. And then do you need any help with the submission of that, or are you in touch with the people from Notes on the Field?
I'm in touch. Yeah,
Good.
yeah.
Okay,
If
good.
you have any like tips or
Yeah, I mean, I could just send you
not.
some, like Fred's done a couple, he tries to do one
Oh,
every
sure,
year.
yeah.
And he just had one that came out, I think a little bit earlier this year on his work up in Alaska. So I'm glad you're doing
Oh,
that.
cool.
That's great.
Sweet, thank you. Yeah, I'm excited. I think it'll be a cool opportunity. The kids were the day that we mentioned like there's this opportunity for us to write something about this camp and it'll be like published by NASA. All the kids were like, we're gonna be published by NASA. Like they were very excited.
It's cool.
Any other questions from the group? Okay, I'm going to stop the recording.